Oh my gosh. Are you a bad sourdough parent? That's okay, so am I. This starter has been living in my fridge, unfed, uncared for, and not even looked at since late spring. But my kids are back in school and it is time to get the sourdough factory going again. So I'm gonna show you how to revive your sourdough starter, even if it's been in the fridge, even if it's been unfed for months, even if you think it won't come back, it will. Before we get cracking on reviving this sourdough starter, we're gonna give it a quick health check. So we're gonna take a look at how it looks, how it smells, and its consistency. So for starters, we're gonna take a look at the appearance here. You are looking for anything furry. If it's furry, it's gotta go. If it's got a streak of orange or pink through it, that means your starter has been contaminated by bacteria. It is super, super normal to see a thick layer of dark liquid on top. That is called hooch, and it is a byproduct of the yeast consuming all the food and becoming hungry. So as you can see, my starter here is got a dark layer of liquid on it, and there are some bubbles and kind of like a mottled appearance. That's totally normal. Next, we're gonna talk about the scent. So you saw me take a big whiff at the beginning. It's going to smell strong. It is a living thing that has not been fed. It's hungry, but the smell can tell you a lot. So if your starter smells like vinegar, that's totally normal. If your starter smells like nail polish remover, that's totally normal. If your starter has a really tangy smell that you can't quite describe, totally normal. If your starter smells moldy, musty, or like rotting meat or something disgusting like that, that's a no from me, dog, and that's gotta go. So mine, it smells like a cross between tangy and vinegar. It's totally, I can tell that it's healthy, that the smell is not repulsive. It's just very strong and kind of like tingles the back of your nose a little bit here. The last thing we're gonna look at is the consistency. So my starter is kept in the fridge in a covered container, which reduces evaporation. At this point, being so long since it's been fed, it is quite liquidy, and that is very normal. Like you can see it's just rolling around in here. This is because the yeasts have consumed as much of the starches in the flour as possible and just turned the whole thing really gooey. Totally normal. If your starter is chunky or otherwise super gross looking, it should be time to go. Contact a friend who has a starter or start another one, but this is what my starter looks like after having been in the fridge and unfed for a number of months. Now that we know our beloved sourdough starter has a clean bill of health, it's time to get to the fun stuff and we can start reviving this starter. So when I'm reviving my starter, I like to stir in the hooch. Some people believe in pouring it off. I personally just stir it in. Then I'm gonna take out my scale, add my jar, and zero out the scale. Because this is inactive starter, I only want to feed a very small amount of this starter to get it going. I do not want to use a whole lot. So usually I'll use 25 to 50 grams of starter. Here we go, 26 grams, that'll do. I personally like to add my water to my starter. I find it's easier to mix that way and get a good mix before I add my flour. So I'm just gonna add 26 grams of water. So my starter and water are mixed into one completely homogeneous mixture, and it's time to add the flour. So I'm just gonna move this out of the way to make room for my big flour tub. Yes, it is big. So I'm going to, because I fed this portion of the starter with 25 grams of starter, 25 grams of water, I'm going to use 25 grams of flour. I like to use a small spoon when I'm working in smaller quantities like this. It just makes it easier to handle. Okay, that was a little high, but it'll work. All right, so I'm just gonna stir this all up. And clearly make a gigantic mess, yeah. Okay. this starter is fed, well stirred, and now it's up to the starter to do what it's got to do. So I'm going to quickly clean this spoon off. One thing I learned the hard way is not to scrape the spoon off with my finger. I did that once, and thankfully I still had a mother in the fridge, but my starter on the counter went bad. So even though my hands are clean, I never scoop the stuff off the spoon into here. I'll put this away. I'm going to place the lid on my starter, but I'm not going to screw it on. So all this is doing is just giving a cover to prevent evaporation and stop fruit flies or whatever from getting in there. So that's the first feed. We're going to leave this now for 12 hours or so, and then we'll come back and do it again. It's been about 12 hours since we fed our sourdough starter, and as you can see, the consistency has changed substantially. It went from a really thick paste to something with a little bit more flow. There are no bubbles. There are no real signs of life aside from the consistency change. So we are still on the revival mode here. It's only been one feed. Your starter won't bounce back after only one feed and being in the fridge for a long time. So we're going to feed it again, and then we're going to feed it again in 12 more hours, but I'm just going to get this going. I like to transfer to a new jar. I find, especially when working with small quantities, it's a lot easier to manage. So I'm going to put approximately 25 grams of starter. Okay, 30 will work. And this I'm going to scrape out into the chicken leftover bin, and I'll give that to them so it does not go to waste. I'm going to add 30 grams of water. Perfect. And then stir it together. So me reviving my starter couldn't have happened at a better time. We had our first frost last night, and I am so excited to shift into baking mode. That's nicely mixed. We're going to add 30 grams of flour. Perfect, 30 grams. So I'm going to stir it up. If you're using a small mason jar like this one is like a half pint, I think they call them in the States. It's 250 mils. You don't want to exceed 30 grams of starter in a jar this size, because you could have like a mess, but it's great. It's a great size for reviving because it's small, it's easy to clean, and it's good to go. So we're mixed. We're back to that thick, like pasty dough-like consistency. So I'm just gonna scrape the edges. Okay. Scrape the edges, put the lid on. Once again, it's not tight. It's just on there to prevent evaporation and contamination. So that's feed number 2. I'm back for feed number 4. I didn't record feed number 3 last night because, I mean, it was exactly the same as feed number 2, but things are now happening, so I thought it was important to stop and take a moment to share with you. As you can see, we are starting to get some bubbles here along the side of the jar and within the starter. So things are finally coming back to life here. That is 3 feeds and 36 hours from coming out of the fridge for this starter. If we take a look, we can see there's a few bubbles forming on the surface. And if we take a smell, it smells a lot more pleasant, a lot less like violently tangy, and like it smells like a good, healthy sourdough starter. So we are on the right track. This 4th feed is pretty straightforward. We're gonna do the exact same thing we've done the last 3 feeds. So we're gonna take 25 grams of starter, 25 grams of water, and 25 grams of flour, feed it and set it aside for 12 hours. And then we're gonna come back and do it again. I'm gonna give this a quick stir, but you can see the consistency is changing every time that we feed it. This is a little thicker, which to me says maybe it hasn't completely consumed everything in here, but I'm gonna feed it anyways, and we're gonna keep on trucking here. So when the starter is a little thicker as it is there, it's harder to mix in. If you've made sourdough before, you definitely know this. Just do your best to kind of break it down in the jar before you move on to the flour. Stir in the flour and make a big mess while we're at it. I really like to mix my starter well. I think it gives a better, honestly, I think it rises better when it's stirred extremely well. So I'm just gonna whip it up good. I'm gonna scrape down the edges and scrape off my spoon. Boom. Lid on. And that's feed number 4. I'm back and we're at the turning point. So I didn't record the last feeding because it was very similar to the feed before, but we're at a point in the revival process where I consider to be a turning point. I am going to consider this starter revived in one more feeding. And here's how you can tell. So this starter now has almost doubled within the last 12 hours. It's filled with different size bubbles and it looks really good. Once we reach this point, it's time to switch to an every 24-hour feed. So we are pretty much there. This starter, in my opinion, one more feed and tomorrow it'll be ready to go. If you love sourdough and like to learn a little bit more about the nitty-gritties, I do have a really great video on how to feed your starter and I'll link it in the description below. It's filled with like tips and tricks and things that I've learned over the past 5-6 years of sourdough baking, and there may be something in there that you find really helpful. Once again, I'm going to start the process. I'm going to get a clean jar, I'm going to feed my starter, and we're gonna keep on keeping on. Also, if you want more sourdough content, please leave me a comment below and let me know what you're looking for. I do have an extensive catalog of sourdough recipes and guides on my food blog, and I would love to make videos for those things if you find them helpful. So please let me know what you're struggling with, what you need to know, what you'd like to know, or recipes that you're looking for, and I will try to get some videos going for those. Thank you for joining me on this sourdough revival journey. This happens in my kitchen every single fall. And it's something that I've just come to know that in the summer, I'm not going to bake sourdough. And in the fall, I'm going to have to bring my sourdough starter back to life. But it bounces back every year. And I know yours will do the same thing with a little TLC. We are going to get this guy going. And I can't wait to start baking soon here. Baking sourdough is one of my favorite things to do. I find in so many ways is so healthy for my mind and so healthy for my family to consume. So it's something that I'm really passionate about and something that I'm very happy to share. And that's it. That's how easy it is to revive your sourdough starter, even if you haven't fed it for months, even if you've neglected it, even if you think it won't come back. I can almost guarantee that as long as it's healthy, it will come back for you. Happy baking.